Tuesday night wines. Oh, that's all over the place. Cabernet Franc. I always say Cabernet Franc is my boyfriend. That's my grape. Just love Cab Franc, like in all its forms. It's been my kind of the one I fell in love with when I first got into wine, and it's still my favorite.
You're listening to the Vint Podcast, bringing you expert interviews, alternative market insights, and exclusive access to the world of wine and spirits investing. Enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Vint Podcast. My name is Brady, joined by Billy. Both of us have stripes on today, and you would know that if you were watching us on our YouTube channel. The podcast is now on YouTube, so if you haven't checked us out over there, I'm going over. It's a great way to view our content and get a fuller sense of the conversation with our guests. So we hope that we'll see you over there. Billy, how have you been?
Doing very well. I'm excited for this episode, not only because our guest was very exciting and energetic. It was a great interview, but also I'm excited to talk about some of our maybe unique things that we've been drinking lately. We haven't really touched on those in a while, so it's going to be a great episode.
I've been talking to a few of our clients or a few of our investors of their own wines that they're drinking and been able to share some cool things recently. It's fun to see people, like we've said in the past, growing alongside their interest in wine and spirits along with investing. I've been trying to grow interest in my local community here recently, and I got a blunder this past weekend. I started Wine Society in my sort of neighborhood, but also the surrounding area, a really robust Facebook page for our neighborhood. There's probably almost 1,000 people on this Facebook, and they talk about road work and break-ins and anything that's happening.
Yeah.
But so I originally spun this Wine Society up out of that and got a good many people to kind of join the group and express interest. And we had our first event. It went great. So we had our second this past weekend, and we had a dozen people RSVP. So I bought all this stuff, charcuterie, cheese, open wine that I thought was interesting and wasn't just like any old bottle. I tried to pull some interesting bottles out of my cellar. And 2 people showed up.
How far apart were these again?
So we do it every 10 weeks. It was only 5 a year.
That's such a random thing. It's a random time period.
Monthly was too often just for our schedule personally. And I think for some of our group people, so I thought, but apparently 10 weeks isn't good either. But I thought that it would give people enough time to kind of plan between each one and to make sure that they could be there. And also I recognize that it can be a financial commitment if you're bringing bottles and stuff like that. So anyways, it's supposed to be every 10 weeks, and I have to wait another 9 weeks to redeem myself and for the group, hopefully to get back on good footing. But
wine.
We did wine or red wine 101 this past weekend. So maybe people just don't like red wine. Maybe when we do white wine 101, it'll be better.
Yeah, spreading the wine gospel is hard, man. Sometimes you just got to drink your own wine.
That's right.
So what were some of the things you opened, or what's something interesting you've had at least?
I was going back and forth trying to figure out, okay, what are a few varieties that people would have to taste to get a sense of, okay, red wine isn't just this monolithic thing. There's white wine and there's red wine. All red wine tastes the same. So I was going to do like a Cab Franc, Zin, and then maybe a Pinot Noir. It was my original goal that I was going to do. I didn't have much. I wanted to have a Lambrusco, but I didn't have it. I wanted to have some just maybe more like effervescent or lighter expressions, but I just didn't have any of that stuff on hand. So I went for those that I just named. And so I ended up having forgetting what it was. It was a James Berry fruit from Paso. It was like 2014. And I cannot remember the producer or which it was right now. And we also had the Bordeaux blend from Barbersville, their Octagon Virginia wine. So that kind of worked as like the older world style expression of some of those varieties. And then we had some Ridge Geyser because someone was asking about Zinfandel and like white Zinfandel. And so we had some like Ridge Zin, and that was cool. And then someone brought this Concord Red that he made. So this was the highlight of the event. One of our group members made 30 bottles of this Concord red wine in his house, 14.5% bottled this month. And I got the second bottle of the 30 that he made. So that was really cool. Shout out to Ben Davis making this wine. Yeah.
Nice. Did you tell the folks drinking the red Zinfandel that's what White Zinfandel is also made out of. It's just the same grape.
Yeah, I was like, White Zinfandels, and you can maybe clarify some of this. I was just like, White Zinfandel is not actually like a real thing, right?
Yeah, it was basically invented out of mistake, like a lot of things in wine, but it was just a stuck fermentation. And what a stuck fermentation means is basically like a wine starts fermenting and then the yeast just crap out for whatever reason. Maybe the sugar content's too high, they were working too fast, but the yeast just stopped fermenting. So they were just left with this wine that had spent a little bit time with the skin, so it got a little pinkish and had some sugar left. And they were like, we're not going to waste this. Let's just bottle it and see if anybody likes it. And then there you go. Everybody liked it.
Yeah, that was neat. And I think what else we had.
I like how your old world expression was from Virginia. That's funny.
Yeah, it really is, though, like in terms of the style of that particular wine. And it was like a 2016, so it wasn't old, but it wasn't recent release. So it had a couple years on it, which is cool. And then the Syrah that we had, like I said, was a 2014. So I think it was neat for folks to be able to have something that was approaching 10 years.
Yeah. We went on our retreat. We went to Barboursville and got to meet the winemaker there who made that wine. And he is French and has a very old world palate. So I'm not arguing with you on the wine. I just think it's funny that growing up in Virginia, never thought I'd hear people say.
I realized that I actually don't have much Bordeaux at all. And so that might be really wild for some people. But I have a ton of Champagne, a good amount of Burgundy, a good amount of Napa, even like way more like Italian and German wines, Austrian wines than I even do Bordeaux. So I didn't have much without having to go out and purchase something. So that was what I went with. We opened a Cab Franc too from a different Virginia producer. Yeah.
Oh, nice. I've tasted, not all of these were bottles. Some of these were just tastings while I was out. So I'll go and order two. We also had a Cab Franc. That was neat. I got to taste that next to a Carmenere from Chile. And it was interesting because the bartender...
Was the Cab Franc Chile, South American, or was it?
No, the Cab Franc was really traditional. It was Chinon from Loire. So it was from the Loire Valley. Chinon is a sub-region within. And it was a really cool expression. And it's one of these local wine bars we go to, and the server was actually trying to learn more about wine himself. Like he's only been there for a little while. So I actually told him to taste the Carmenere next to the Cab Franc because Carmenere is known for its pyrazines, and so is Cab Franc, but their expression is just so different from the Loire. And of course, the accompanying flavors as well are so different. So that was neat. We also had over the weekend, I had a traditional Austrian kind of red blend from Burgenland. It was just, I assume it was mostly Blaufränkisch and Zweigelt, maybe some Saint Laurent. But what I thought was interesting is it was at one of these little kind of more hipster kind of natural wine bars nearby us. We were just out walking the neighborhood, and they just had the name of the producer. It was some long traditional Austrian German name. And they basically said red fruit, bright, mineral driven, typical for the region, or like traditional Burgenland. And I was just like, I knew exactly what they meant. I was like, sweet, love it. But who else just walking around the neighborhood randomly is like, yes, these traditional Burgenland wines. They were like, oh yeah, indicative of the region. I was just like, who else is reading this? And I was like, cool. All right, works for me. But I think the highlight of the weekend, and I have my big wine books thing out, was the Turpat we had on one of the wine bars as well. The producer was, I have it up here, Oriol Artigas, and it was called Samay Negre. It was from Catalonia, and basically Turpat, Trepat, is a traditional red varietal from Catalonia. Looking in my book of grapes here, I think it's native to the area, and it's typically just used in pink cava, rosé cava, rosado. And when I was doing my studies, and I think I might have mentioned this on maybe one of our other podcasts, somebody had mentioned the grape in one of my things I was reading, and they were like, if you ever find it single varietal, you should try it. And randomly enough, we were offered it, and it was really good. This was like a Cerasuolo darker rosé style, but really cool, and I was really excited to see it, so had to share.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't heard that. I didn't know that's basically like a large percentage of rosé cava is that variety, or is it not?
There's a mix of grapes that are in rosé cava, and it's not super common. The single varietal or extra hard. It's just one of the blending grapes that are allowed in rosé cava, so they can include like Grenache, Noir, Pinot Noir. This grape. There's a few other ones as well. I think Carignan can be, but yeah, it's just one of those, and it's like an obscure blending grape that you never really see that much on its own. Yeah, I
remember the other one that we had was Zero from, if I'm saying it right, from Portugal. Sinal, Teria Franca, and what was the other?
Rorish?
Great. Mm,
Tinto Rorish?
I'm not seeing. No, I don't think so. I'm not seeing the other one. I'm just looking online here at some of these different varieties. I'm not seeing the third one. That what you're saying isn't it though? But that was interesting. Never had. Yeah, I haven't had a wine from there before. And that was what the lady who brought it. She went into the wine shop and she was. I forget what she said she was looking for, but the wine shop owner said, "Oh, have you had anything from Portugal?" And she said, "Oh, like Vino Verde." He was like, "Oh, try this." And so she had never. She just brought it off his recommendation. So that's cool.
I love that. Yeah. No, they're great value to be found in Portugal. Those two grapes are two of their longest lived, thick, higher tannin, darker skin. They're prized for making port. And the other grape I was suggesting was their name for Tempranillo. But there's a ton of grapes that can be made up there that are widely grown. So,
yeah. It was a pretty even blend of the three. It was like 40, 30, 30 or something like that. Or yeah, it was interesting. It was fine. It was good.
Nice.
And we had a cool conversation about like price of wine. I just asked like what people's just sort of personal conceptions of what value was and were like what they expect to spend when they go out and buy wine. I thought that was kind of interesting because it led us into a conversation of trying to figure out why people will spend more for a bottle of wine, 5 glasses versus a bottle of spirits that you might get like 15 or 18 or whatever the number is, I forget, out of. And so that was kind of interesting, just talking about like value and consumer habits.
It's really cool. Outside of one of these wine bars, we were actually like a block away and I just heard a dude being like, "Yeah, dude, you're so baller. You can find like an $80 bottle that like nobody really knows. If you can find a wine that's $80, but it's like really baller, like you're a G, man." And I was like, yeah. And I was like, dude, that's not impressive. Anybody can find a good $80 bottle. Like you can find a really cool one that's under 20 or 20 to 30 that's like out of this world. That's cool. But he would stop him overheard in LA.
I was reading Aldo Psalms, The Wine Simple, a little bit before people came over because what was I looking at? Something about, something with service temperature. I was like trying to figure out this one wine that we had. Anyways, and he was talking about, I was in the section, he was talking about how his threshold was like $12, or he would never spend less than $12 for a bottle of wine, or he was like telling people not to spend less than $12. So we talked about that a little bit too. And some group members were like, yeah, I feel like you can't physically can't make wine in terms of producing it for under $10 if you're like not cutting corners and stuff like that. So like,
yeah, there's economies of scale and production that need to be met to be able to do that type of thing. Yeah, I think that's a fairly, in the US at least, I wouldn't spend under 12. You can, if you're over in Europe or else, it's possible, I would say.
I do still stand by TJ's $7 Gewürztraminer though. I think that breaks the mold. And they have a Vino Verde for $6 or $5 that breaks the mold too, I think. So I don't know. Maybe they do some like weird magic stuff. I don't know how they get juice.
I'm talking on the whole. Vino Verde, there are some really affordable ones that are pretty cool. And same with really, like there's some Cava, like the Freixenet Cordon Negro. I think that's $9.99 even here. So, and I think I don't mind that one. It's traditional method. It's good to me.
What I don't understand is how they does. I don't know if it's out in California, but in Virginia they had a $4.99 Rosé Pinot Noir. I don't know how they do that at $4.99, but it was very good. I thought so.
It's probably not all Pinot Noir, but yeah, cool. A couple of things. So the reason we brought up Brady trying to host events and interesting grapes, Vint is having an event in New York at some point here. We're working on planning. If you're interested, reach out to Brady. He's trying to get a head count of all the local vinters that are going to be going. I don't know if that's the name we use. And then we have a really interesting interview with Kristy Wenz for Head. Brady, do you want to talk a little bit about who she is and how we came across her?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, a couple more details I actually can share on the event. It's going to be February 24th. Pretty sure it's 7 p.m. We're still working on nailing down the venue. We're in the final stages of that right now. There's a chance that time could change, but right now it is February 24th. That's a Friday in probably Midtown Manhattan at 7 p.m. So yeah, reach out if you would like an RSVP form. We'd love to have you there, both for current and prospective investors or folks who just want to come hang out, drink some wine, and meet me. And maybe, I don't know if any other members of our team will be there, but certainly some current investors as well. And then in terms of our interview today, we did have an awesome conversation with Kristy Wenz, who is the Senior Managing Director at Vino Head. She's a writer, an educator around wine. She's done some WSET courses, intro courses for WSET, and just really has a lot of knowledge about wine across the US because I think her writing with Vino Head and the work there, but also she's just a passionate student and drinker of cool wines. We talked a lot about the wines from Michigan in the opening part of the episode, and yeah, it gives a lot of great recommendations on wine culture. And yeah, great. We're excited for you to listen into this conversation.
Yeah, it was one of my favorites in a while. Yeah, enjoy.
Here's Kristy.
Hey, Kristy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I love your background, a lot of colors, and Gatsby, I love that.
Yep. Some wine glasses over there.
Are you all things art and culture along with wine, or sort of what's your
I would say mostly
disposition?
Music, but I'm Fitzgerald obsessed, so that's the connection there. And Hemingway and Fitzgerald are kind of my go-tos, but otherwise mostly music.
Nice.
Are you a big like wine label, like kind of big on the labeling?
Not really. Sometimes one will jump out and I'll grab it because of that, but really.
Nice. I was going to say on the Hemingway side, I've done like a small, basically following in his footsteps over the years, like travel wise. I went to his grave in Idaho last year.
Oh, but cool. I forgot that's out there. That's right. Yeah, I've been to his birthplace in Oak Park here in Chicago.
Oh, no. Yeah. So my mom is from Oak Park. So we had done that. I've done Key West, Rhonda, and Cuba. So I just had to see where he died. And I was just like, I'm good to go.
I love that. Because I've done the same thing with Fitzgerald, and I don't tell anybody because I feel like, oh my God, I'm like chasing a dead guy around places he was. And it feels weird. I'm like, he wrote that book in that house. And I have pictures of the house. And
it's totally normal. Everybody
I think so. I think so. Why not? Awesome.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so we brought you on to talk only about literature. So that's it. Perfect. Speaking of writing, Nick has been friends with Josh at Vino Head for a while. I got to meet him for lunch last year. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got connected with Vino Head and like what it is and a little bit more about your background as a whole?
Yeah, totally. And it's actually fun. I think Nick was our first corkboard interview that we did. He was either the first or the second.
Oh, cool.
So our corkboard features are kind of this Q&A thing. So that's how I got to know Nick. But Vino Head, it came up actually through an Instagram connection. That's how I met Josh. Probably, it would have been back in 2020, I think. And so I started writing some reviews for him. And then shortly after that, he needed a managing editor and I jumped on board. So that was the whole entry into Vino Head. And it's been there, since 2020 now. So it's been pretty cool.
Which is a decade ago, basically,
right?
in
human years. Yeah, we don't even,
right.
Not even dog years. I mean, it's like human years for that debacle.
Can you give our listeners a little background on what Vino Head is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Vino Head is right now it's a weekly newsletter. It comes out every Friday and we give anywhere from 6 to 8 wine reviews on stuff that our tasting lab is drinking. And it's all stuff that we just drink in our everyday lives. So it's stuff that we're buying on our own, that we're having at restaurants. We'll get some samples sent to us, but they only make it if we actually like them. So it's not pay for play. There's absolutely no advertising dollars going into Vino Head. So it's just really what we're drinking. In the tasting lab, we've got writers from across the country, some sommeliers, some just wine educators, some just consumers that know wine really well and like to write. So there's a whole kind of mixed bag of our tasting lab. We're always on the lookout for new talent in writing and people that are interested in that aspect of wine. And that comes out every Friday. We have that corkboard feature I mentioned earlier that comes out in the newsletter as well, Q&A feature on people either in wine or loosely connected to wine. But the interviews are fun. They're like, would you rather, spend the night in a rainforest or at the North Pole? Like they're just random questions and designed in a way to really get to know somebody and break down those barriers, which I think is kind of what Head is in its essence. It's kind of our purpose is to break down those barriers in wine. It's oftentimes it can be so stuffy and unapproachable, and we just want to open it up and make a community out of it. So we're developing the community, talking with people rather than at people, and we're living in the real world and drinking wine and telling people where we're drinking it and why we're drinking it. It's less focused on, the reviews are less focused on here's what we're tasting in the wine and the structure. Like we're not doing the educational breakdown. It's more here's a couple flavors, but here's where we enjoyed it and how it went with this, and maybe pair it with this, and date night wine or just take it out by the pool kind of wine, and just making it part of a lifestyle. Because for us, that's what it is. It's about drinking it with friends and family and people that we enjoy spending time with. And also about meeting other people too, which I think is the cool thing about wine. Make friends over wine. And so we're really just trying to reach as many people as we can, especially focused on the millennials and Gen Zs and talking their language and making wine a part of the lifestyle.
What's the value in your mind of someone hearing about a wine from Kristy versus James Suckling? Because like for us, the scores and vintage ratings and stuff in our side of the business is still something that we need to talk about
For sure.
when we're approaching some of these wines. But definitely, I don't know a 21-year-old who cares about James Suckling.
Yeah, they're kind of
I would also say, before you dive in, the one difference might be that James Suckling only gives 99s and 100s, and I'm sure Kristy criticizes the wine sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
0.2 point scale.
Yeah, I would say even a necessary evil. Like, I still look at them too, even though I don't want to. And I feel like there's a lot of people that way. Like, we don't want to look at them. We don't want them to matter, but then you still look. But I would say, I think the value of either a point system or trusting a reviewer is getting to know who they are and what they like. Because not everybody's going to have the same wines I like. And same with my writers. Like, I don't always like the wines that they're drinking. And they don't always like the wines that I'm drinking because it's so personal. And so it's really about describing the scenario, why we liked it, why we'd enjoy it, some kind of unique things about it. Because the flavors and the smells, all that stuff is so subjective, right? What I smell might not be what you smell. So it's hard to really get into that. And you can say, okay, red fruits or tree fruits or whatever. And that you're in that ballpark and you can get more micro from there. But I don't know. I think once you get to know the reviewer and start to understand the kinds of wines they like, and the authenticity behind them, then you can start to connect a little bit more and figure out, okay, I know I tried that wine that somebody drank last week and I liked it, so maybe I'll pay attention to their reviews a little bit more. The reviews that make it into the newsletter for us are generally wines that we've enjoyed. We don't put anything in there that we didn't like. So you're not going to see some criticism in there. But there are times in my other sides of my world where I write about wines where I will say, this one, it's not my style, but I can objectively say that here it's got the structure's good, this is good. I think it'll appeal to people that like this style of wine. So you can be fair about it without having to make every wine sound like it's phenomenal, because you're not going to think every wine's phenomenal. I don't. There's some I just really don't like, but I know other people do, and that's okay.
Yeah. So how did you get into wine writing, the review stuff? Yeah, take us all the way back to the beginning.
We don't want to go all the way back.
Okay, fine.
This was a long,
far enough so we don't get scared. Yeah.
Exactly. A long winding path. My first interest in wine really started out in California. I was on a road trip, and wine wasn't really, I drank it occasionally and liked it, but it wasn't something that was on my radar. And it's an embarrassing story, but we're driving through the desert and I really have to go to the bathroom. So we're like, all right, we got to find a place to stop. And we found, and this was probably 2 decades ago, Temecula, California. So at the time, now it's like the Disneyland of wine down there, right? There's so many spots. But at the time, there was just like a handful of wineries. We're like, I have a bathroom. Just stop at one of those. And we did. I went to the bathroom, came out, and they're like, oh, you want to do a tasting? We're like, okay. I've never really done one of these before, but sure. I was like, all right, that was fun. So we stopped at another one, and guy comes out and he's like, oh, you just missed the tour. And we're like, we have no idea what he's talking about. Like, we just wanted to taste some wine. We've never done this before. And he's like, come on back. He was the owner. He spent 2 hours with us just talking to us about how to make wine, the business side, and get into the economics, the market. Like, it was just a whole, and I was just eating it up. I'm like, this is amazing. And that was after that, every trip involved going to wineries, every road trip across the country. If we found one in the middle of Nebraska, we'd stop. Like, it just became what we did. And so that really got the ball rolling into my entry into tasting wines and enjoying wines. And then, oh gosh, in 2015, I was on another vacation. We were staying on a vineyard at an Airbnb property and ended up getting to know the owner of the Airbnb property really well. And they owned the vineyard and they needed some help tying vines. I was like, we'll do that. They're like, no, it's your vacation. I'm like, yeah, but that would be cool. That'd be an amazing vacation for me. Yeah, and so we ended up tying vines for a day and then met the marketing director for the Finger Lakes Wine Country Association there. And so started talking to her, and my background is marketing and PR. And she's like, oh, you like to write? She's like, I could use some articles. And so it kind of took off from there. So Finger Lakes, I always say, is my home away from home, because that really kicked off the career. But it wasn't a direct path even after that. It was a lot of trial and error of testing different hats, different things, see what I liked, what fit. And even now, like I do so many different things that it's hard to, I do all kinds of things. And anything and everything to do with wine that I can get my hands on, I love it. I just love it. So definitely a winding path, but I'm no longer in the corporate America world. I did get out of that. That is wine full time.
Yeah, Billy's a huge Nebraska wine guy. I'm always joke with Billy that he likes wines if they're from a state that doesn't actually produce wine.
Yeah, no, they actually do. It's crazy. It's great. And I had some good stuff. I wouldn't put it next to Bordeaux or Napa or anything like that, but there's some really drinkable stuff out there and some fun spots to just hang out for an afternoon. And it's cool what you come up with. It's wild. I think we've had wines in 28 states now, at least. So,
wow,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and definitely
That's
not
cool.
all winners, but
drinkable.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is what
Most of
every
them.
winery strives
Most
for.
of them. There's a
Drinkable.
few that were maybe not so drinkable, but yeah, there's stuff for everybody, and it's fun. It's really cool to see how the industry's really grown. I think there's wine in all 50 states at this point. It's cool. It's a cool thing.
Yeah, I really want to try an Alaska wine.
I
just
would
don't know.
say that.
So.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to try. There's a lot of wines I'd still like to try. Like I'd love to try. I haven't had any Arizona wine. I've heard that's taken off, so I'd like to try that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so people and some of my studies, like I'm trying to wrap up this WSET diploma soon. And it always boggles my mind. I just did some of the sparkling, and they're like the English wine. It's a very short growing season. But since English wine, there's a lot of examples of this, but short growing season, but since they are higher latitude, the amount of sun hours they get, that always boggles my mind. So when I first thought of Alaska, I was like, oh, their summer's way too short, but it's when it's sunny hours a day and they can pump up the sugars, you're good to go.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah.
But speaking of a colder place that grows grapes, Michigan, you work on a winery there. Tell us a little bit about your work up there and the producer you work with.
Yeah, I worked with a lot up there. So it's mostly in Southwest Michigan. So Michigan's got, I think, 5 AVAs now.
Oh, wow.
4 kind of biggest ones are, 2 of them are in the southwest corner of the state. And then 2 are a little bit further north up in the Traverse City area. Vastly different from each other, but just a really cool place that I think is going to be on the forefront, just given climate change. Like they're positioned really well. Kind of like the UK, like you said, like they're in that same kind of climate change is going to benefit the vines there. But I got involved there. I started, same thing, traveling up there. It was just in the backyard for Chicago. And summers we'd spend doing wine tours and visiting all the wineries and just camping up there. The beach is right there, so it's great. And I got to know a winemaker. This would have been about 5 years ago. Another Airbnb too, like Airbnb. I should thank Airbnb. Stayed at an Airbnb property. The guy had a winery, and so we started talking, hit it off. And he's actually the one that got me in all my WSET programs, and he became my mentor. And I ended up doing 3 harvests with him, and so that was amazing. And then after that, I started working with the wine trail itself to produce a video talking about the area itself and really digging into the geology and the terroir and everything that it has going on. And then started working with another winery after that has a vineyard and a winery. So I did 2 full growing seasons on the vineyard in the cellar, and it helped to make some wines. And it's amazing. And it was just cool to be a part of that process and see how everything actually works and get it to be hands-on. And because it's one thing to, I think, read it in a book, like I can memorize stuff, but then to actually see it and touch it and do it, it's okay, now I get it. Like now that makes sense. So it really helped to connect the dots. And Michigan, Southwest Michigan's pretty cool. I really think it's going to be, I always say it's like the Finger Lakes about 15, 20 years ago. It's got the potential. There's only about 20 wineries there right now, but there's a lot of new growers coming in. There's a lot of new young winemakers coming in. So I think you're going to start to see it pick up over the next decade or 2. It always takes a while, but I think it's on its way.
What are they growing up there? Is it mostly hybrids, or is there vinifera too?
Mostly vinifera. There are some hybrids, but the places I was at, it's all vinifera. Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Gris, a lot of Bordeaux blends, so Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, see Merlot up there, Syrah. There's some Marsanne Roussanne. You can find a lot of vinifera up there. Further up north in the Travers area, you see a lot more Riesling, a lot more kind of Alsatian style wines, some great sparkling wines, traditional method, a lot of that happening. But then some hybrids too. You for sure have those. You'll have Marquette and Maréchal Foch and Val and Vignoles and a couple of those. So a little more cold hardy varieties. But I think you're seeing a move more towards the vinifera because it's working, and a lot of them are organic, and a lot of them are working towards sustainability, and it's actually working, and you're seeing it work. So I think it'll be kind of a cool thing over the next few years.
Do you have a sense of how the approach differs in terms of marketing emerging wines out of regions like that versus some of the established places?
Yeah, it's
like, what's the approach that you take getting someone to put a Michigan wine on their table, for instance?
Yeah, it's tough. It's definitely not easy. And one of the hard parts is that the quantity that they have to put out there just isn't as much as it might be from some of the bigger areas. So the stuff that they're making, they want to sell in their tasting room because they do sell out in the tasting rooms. Tasting rooms are hopping in the summer times, especially. And so they end up selling out. And so they don't have a lot to distribute. So it's mostly, I would say at this point, it's a lot of promoting the tourism of the region to get people there. And for a region like Michigan, like I said, it's in Chicago's backyard. So it's really trying to bring awareness to Chicago as well as Indianapolis and Detroit, because they're all within that can easily get up there and spend the weekend or spend a week in the summer. So it's a lot of tourism promotions at this point, I think, to get people familiar with the region. But then you are starting to see some of the producers, the one I was just at for the last 2 years, that are focusing only on distribution. So right now they don't have a tasting room. They will at some point, but they're focusing heavily on distribution in Chicago. So you're starting to see some of it really start to push to market, which is cool. But it's a challenge because they're unknown regions, and especially you get people that are used to drinking from the bigger places that they know. And it's a different style of wine. It's when you get a Cabernet from Michigan, it's not like a Cabernet from California or Bordeaux. It's Michigan. It's high quality. Some of them. there's a lot of it, like anywhere. There's some variance in quality, but the ability to make a high quality wine is there. And it's more of a cool climate. So you're going to get the higher acids. You're going to get those more fresh fruit forward flavors. So it's an education process like anything else, wine. It's like, it's apples and oranges. You can't compare one region to the other. It's always going to be different. You can assess quality. You can assess, is it made in the right way? Does it have balance? Does it have structure? Does it, that kind of stuff. But you can't compare it to other regions. It kind of did it on its own. So it's more of a challenge, I think, because it does require a bit of education and a big ask of people to trust me on this wine, because I can't tell you the amount of times I've been laughed at because I like Michigan wine. Like, oh yeah, Michigan. I'm like, no, for real. I gotta try this. Yeah. So open up to it. There's some good stuff. But I think when people are open and keep an open mind, I think they start to realize, okay, there's actually something happening. And that's true of any emerging region. They're going to have those hiccups when they first start out because they're learning. When you look at Napa, they only just started really in the 60s and 70s, right? That's not that long ago. For these newer regions that are just starting up, they're not too late to the game. It takes a little while. So I think just have to have an open mind with it.
That makes a lot of sense. So are you seeing when they are distributed more like specialty wine shops, or is it hospitality first? Like, where are they getting their foot in the door?
Yeah, this particular winery is at Stranger Wine Company. They got their foot in the door through a natural wine distributor here in Chicago. And so they were in, I want to say, don't quote me on this, but maybe 25 different restaurants. So mostly on premise, which I think is the way to go initially, just because on premise, then the people selling the wine have the ability to tell the story, which is once that starts rolling, builds momentum, then I think it's easier to move into the off premise stuff. Yeah, it's sold out. Their pallets are moving. It seemed to go really well because you're able to sell that local angle too, that it's something that's local to us, and it has that sustainability aspect. It's in our backyard, which is cool. So it's got a lot of story to tell, which is kind of interesting too.
Nice. I think a lot of us in the wine industry would love people to build more relationships with their local wine merchants and their shops, their boutique shops, and to get recommendations from those places and to buy wines maybe from smaller portfolios out of those places. How do you see the relationship of maybe a wine content and media team like Vino had? What role do they play alongside maybe like the desire for people to also be getting those recommendations that you might give from their local shops?
Sure. Yeah, right now we have, so every wine that we list in the newsletter that we review, we have an affiliate link where you can actually buy that wine. And it's typically local shops. So K&L merchants out in the West Coast, Mr. D's in Florida. So it's all like local spots that we'll refer to. Cool. Down the line, maybe you'll see a Vino Head sticker in a wine shop that has a Vino Head approved kind of thing. Who knows? No point numbers, but approved by Vino Head. Sure. You never know. But I think there's definitely a way to do that. That's how we find a lot of the wines that we're reviewing is we're going to our local shops and taking recommendations, or if we're at the restaurant, we talk to the somms and figure out, okay, what's new, what's going to pique our interest. And we ask questions all the time, and it's cool. And I always tell people that, what wine should I pick? I still get overwhelmed. You walk into one of those big box stores and I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. I've been in this a while. It's overwhelming. And so I think you just have to ask questions, and even the pros ask questions because there's always something new. And that's the cool thing about it. It's a rabbit hole. There is always something new, and that's the fun part about it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You always ask questions. The questions may change, but there's always more questions that you're going to have.
Exactly. That's fun.
The more I've learned about wine, the more questions you end up having, actually. You feel like you go through a little phase where you're like, oh no, I got it all. And then you're like, oh, no, that was horrible. I knew nothing.
Exactly. And even
extremely short phase.
Right? Yeah, super short. And even look at the masters of wine. Even they don't know everything. They know a lot more than me, But like, I feel like everybody has their niche too and what they're interested in. And there's so many different things you can be interested in. Everything from like, you mentioned the labels on the wine bottles. You can be focused on that. You can be really geeking out about the yeasts in the wine or sustainable viticulture, or maybe it's the history or the family story. There's so many pieces that I think if you're into wine and have an interest in it, there's so many different paths you can take that it's just really cool. It's just a never ending and so you can focus on the things that you enjoy, maybe specialize in that, get good at that and be expert in that area, but you're not going to know everything. It's impossible.
Yeah.
You're go on, Brady. I'll change.
Well, I was going to go into maybe talking about more of some of your like current interests in wine right now. And just, I know you obviously write a lot about what you're drinking,
Yeah.
but wine, maybe to talk a little bit about what's in your fridge right now. What are you drinking on a Tuesday? Kind of what sorts of things you're really excited about?
Awesome. In my fridge right now, there's almost nothing because I'm moving. So everything is already gone. I shipped all the wine. It was terrifying watching the wine leave the house. I was like, oh my
Goodbye.
God, my babies. Please. But I would say most often, I always have some kind of sparkling in my fridge. Like always, I do love champagne. That's my thing, especially grower champagne. I'm getting really into that the last couple of years. So I've always got some of that laying around. But really any kind of sparkling, traditional method sparkling, I have around a lot. Tuesday night wines. Oh, that's all over the place. I will really drink almost anything. I tend to lean more towards cool climate. I like higher acidity wines. Cabernet Franc, I always say Cabernet Franc is my boyfriend. That's my grape. Just love Cab Franc, like in all its forms. It's been my kind of the one I fell in love with when I first got into wine, and it's still my favorite. So there's always some of that around. I don't know. I like exploring lots of different wines, but it's been an interesting, even in the last 10 years, I've switched from when I first started getting into wine, I really only liked reds. Like I wouldn't touch white wines. I didn't care for them. And it's now kind of, I think I drink more whites than reds at this point. So I've flipped a little bit, which is interesting. So I think your taste just changes over time, and I'm sure it'll change again. And what I'm drinking today might not be what I like tomorrow. And so it's interesting. But I would say cool climates. I tend to like wines that aren't too heavy in alcohol. I like the 13% range, or is where I like to fall. Anything more than that, it's like, it's a bit much for me at times, unless I'm having a big meal with it.
Especially a Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I got to get up and work. So it's not great. But yeah, I would say kind of sparkling wines are more my everyday kind of obsession lately. And that's been a lot of fun to kind of get into those.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I agree. Also, we have a recommendation for the equivalent of a brewer champagne in the Willamette Valley. One of our buddies over at Granville. So yeah, he's basically making, we can chat about it more, but he's basically making like very small lots, and he makes a Blanc de Blanc. He just came out with a Blanc de Noir. Was it Brady, or was it?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It's Blanc de Noir.
But they're super cool.
I believe he's had the Blanc de Noir for a little while, and the Blanc de Blanc is the new thing.
Yeah,
that's super neat. But traditional, nice lees time.
Yeah, send me the details.
But
I will be there.
We'll use that then as a transition. So you're moving to the Willamette Valley.
Yeah.
What spurred this, and what are you going to be? Where are you going to be?
I'm going to be smack in the heart of Willamette and McMinnville. So I will be like right in the center of it all, which is, it boggles my mind. So like I Googled wineries when I was there, and it was like 700. And I was just like, my God, like what? This is amazing. I'm going from Michigan where I've got 20 that I work with. I'm like, there's 700 wineries. So it was actually, my husband's job has taken us out there, and he's not in wine. It's completely unrelated. So he was in a national job search, and this was the one that came up. And so it was just synchronicity. I'm like, this is amazing. Like I get to be in wine country. You get to do your thing. Vino Head I can do from anywhere in the country. Headquartered in LA, but like I said, our writers are scattered everywhere. So I'll still be working on that. Obviously won't be at the vineyard in Michigan anymore. So I'll be missing Michigan, but there's a few other vineyards out there that I can check out if I want to. But yeah, I'll be teaching, I'll be writing, I'll be just doing everything I do here, just taking it to a new location. So I'm excited.
You'll be 22 minutes from our friends at Granville.
Excellent. Okay. That might be the first place I go. Okay, here we go.
It's better than the 42 hours that I am from them.
Because I don't think my wine will get there before I do, so I might need to fix them up.
Well, McMinnville is like the best spot because you're basically an hour radius to anything, including back up to Portland, back to the bottom of the valley. Like, it's a nice spot.
Yeah, it's incredible. So. Yeah, to the ocean. Like, this is all coming from the middle of the country. To me, this is amazing. So, oh my God, being to the ocean in 45 minutes. It's insane. Yeah. So it should be pretty cool. I'm excited and just excited to dive into the wines there. The job interview was the first trip I had ever made out there. So I haven't really explored the Willamette at all. So I'm excited to really dig in and get to know it.
Yeah, even in Portland, there's a really cool wine scene overall. Some of the bars and shops.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah,
we
go like once a year at least.
Okay.
Last year was a couple times.
Awesome.
It's super dandy. Yeah, there's always something new to find.
Well, you have to look me up while I'm there now.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So you're teaching. How did you get into teaching? Because that's always something I've been interested in down the line personally, but also just what levels do you teach? Yeah, how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I got it. It was another Instagram connection, which seems to be kind of everything in my life happens. I met the owner of a wine school here in Chicago. We happened to be at a lunch together, and I've gotten through level 3, started diploma, and decided I just do not have the time or headspace for that. So maybe sometime down the line, but not right now. But I can teach level 3, you can teach levels 1 and 2. I prefer to just do level 1. I love it. It's mostly consumers. It's mostly non-career oriented people that just are curious about wine, which is my sweet spot.
It's the best, yeah.
And I love those classes. There's people on dates. There's people there for girls' night. They're there with their buddies, and there's people that are just curious. And you just get these. It fuels my excitement even more because it's after you're doing this for a while, it's easy to lose sight, I think, of why you're doing it. You just get into it. But then you go to these classes and they're just as excited. Like you see their excitement. It's yes, that's why I got into wine. That's why I'm still here. And so it's just so much fun to go through that class. And it's basic entry level wine info. Like here's how you make wine. It's very macro level kind of stuff, but it's a blast. And I think teaching level 1 is an opportunity to start to break down some of those barriers, to get people less afraid to talk about it and to have conversations and say what they like and don't like. And just, it's an opportunity to share and say, this doesn't have to be scary. And we're all learning. We all have questions. I'm the same boat as you. I started there and I'm over here and I'm still asking questions and I still get things wrong. And so it really opens up those conversations and it's just a blast. And then there's the food and wine pairing lab with level 1. That's always awesome. That's the only level that has that.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, which is always my favorite thing.
I skipped that, but I had one of the guys who was teaching my level 3 was like bragging about how he would always give everybody like hot Cheetos and like the highest alcohol red wine he could find just to show them. And he's just like, oh, it's hilarious, the reaction.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I do like hot, what is it? Like a hot tapito sauce or something. It's like a hot salsa sauce and it's super spicy. And then I usually do either like a high alcohol Zin or high alcohol Shiraz. And I do it with them. So I'm like, you don't have to do this by yourselves. I will do it too. But the watching faces is just priceless. Like,
bet you would never do that with a Cab Franc. You're willing to ruin Zin, but you
exactly. I'm not doing it with a good. Yeah, I'm not with a good bottles. No. And this is the heavy, jammy, high burning sensation. Yeah, it's great, but it's so much fun. I actually had a guy once I was teaching virtually during the pandemic, and so they had to bring their own supplies for that one. So he had some hot salsa, and we're doing the exercise, and he took a spoonful of the hot salsa, and I was like, "Oh no!" I'm like, "No, just like if you don't have a chip, just like a dab." Like, what? He was on fire. He left the camera. I'm like, "Yeah, he's not gonna be back for a while." That was not good. So now I have to like preface everything. Say, do not take a spoonful. Just take a little dab on your chip or on your hand, like whatever you want to do, but do not do a spoonful. But it's just a ton of fun. And it's cool too, because you get to see like those aha moments for people. Because you're learning why things work and why they don't work. You're not getting too granular of recipe kind of stuff. But here's why hot salsa and high alcohol don't work. So you talk about that stuff and you get to see their aha moments. Oh, okay. Yeah. And again, it breaks down those barriers. Like it doesn't have to be that complicated. Wine is supposed to go with food. It's meant to be with meals. So wine's not really the problem. It's more our foods that's where we complicate things. It's fun to do those classes. I just love it.
How did you end up on the WSET track versus CMS or something else? Was it never really a thought that you would do CMS or? Yeah,
never really a thought. The guy I was working for in Michigan, he had the WSET classes at the winery. And so that's where I took 1 and 2. And then for me, I wasn't interested in the service side. Like I knew that wasn't something I wanted to do. For me, it's more the kind of the business side or the education side, marketing side, writing side. So I think for me, the WSET just fit better. I'm not ever going to serve a table. I would be terrible at that. No one wants me doing that. I can happily talk to people at a table, but you don't want me serving anyone because it will be a mess. Yeah. So I think that was kind of why I never really went that route. But yeah, there's so many education opportunities out there from the certified wine specialists and CMS and WSET and the Wine Scholar Guild. There's so many opportunities out there. And then programs too. In McMinnville, where we're going, but my husband's job's at Linfield University, and they actually have a wine and viticulture program there. So that's cool too. Like you can career track yourself right away. But I wish I had known that at 18. I would have my life might have lined up a little bit differently, but all worked out.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I got into wine when I was 26 after watching Thom for the millionth time.
Yep.
So all I did was I was like, oh, I wonder how people do this. And I just signed up for an exam, and I didn't drink wine. So I just read the wine Bible and took the exam 3 months later. And I was like, oh, this is fun.
Wow.
And then I got hooked. So then I took the certified Somm exam a month and a half later and randomly passed that. So I was like, maybe I should go into wine as a career.
Nice. And do you want to go on to the MW after your diploma, or is diploma kind of the...
Yeah, that would be that's the ultimate goal. So we will see. I'm knocking on wood, hopefully get my positive results. And then now that we have my boss here now is an MW. So my biggest concern was how to get a recommendation from an MW. So if Adam doesn't give me one,
stay on good behavior.
I'll quit.
Yeah, that's right.
But I was going to ask earlier, I don't want our audience to think they're stupid questions, but what are some of the funnier questions you've gotten during your classes about
and that's just
oranges and orange wine?
And there's no bad questions, right? That's just it.
Know what you don't know.
I had somebody ask what the difference between Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon was. And it was an honest question, honestly didn't know, and laugh at it. But if you don't know, you don't know. And it's okay, here, it's a red grape and a white grape. Those are the two biggest differences. It can be as basic as that. And then I'll get other questions. You always get the headaches and sulfites question. That's always a fun one. And then I get a lot of questions about what is natural wine. You get that a lot lately, which isn't it's not a bad question. It's just a complicated answer because there is no standards, there's no category, there's nothing defining that specifically, so it's so vague.
Do you hand out those little droppers that reduce tannins?
No. No.
I saw that in a store the other day. It was a little dropper, and it says tannin reducer.
What is it, just sugar or
I don't know
proteins? It just finds the wine in the glass.
I was thinking about just buying the whole case of it off the shelf and throwing it out on the way out the door so that no one else bought it.
You want minimal intervention wines on one hand, but then you're going to add something to it. No,
that's right.
Don't do it. No, it's just, I always just tell people, have a glass of water. Make sure you're having a lot of water. That's just hydrate, because it is dehydrating. There's your headaches. It dehydrates you easily. So just drink some water. But I think those were probably the wildest question, most basic questions. It's always something, because it's just, and that was interesting too. I feel like the more wine education we take on the career track route, you're surrounded by people that know as much as you do, right? You're studying the same stuff. So your bubble becomes other people that know wine. And you forget that the majority of people out there, it's not what they do. It's not what they know. They know what's at the grocery store. They know what they had at a friend's house. That's it, but that's it. And they shouldn't know anymore. Why do they have to? It's not their job, right? So I think it's remembering that, this is what I do. This is why I know this, but other people they don't. And so I think that's where the recommendations come in too, because not everybody wants to study this stuff. We're the crazy ones that love it. And it's our thing, and it's not everybody else's thing. And they just want to know, tell me what I should buy and why. I don't want to know about the yeast. I don't care. Just give me tell me what bottle I need.
It's interesting on our side of the business because we're an investment company. We have folks who come to us strictly because they were into the investment thing and the finance. And we have people who come in because they were really interested in wine. And so the spectrum of understanding about wine, it's really fun to interact with clients who, I actually had someone the other day, I think maybe listens to the podcast, so we'll recognize this, but was saying that he actually started getting more into wine from following some of our content and being invested with us, which is really great because we don't think of ourselves as a wine company primarily, but it's always really cool for obviously Billy and I who are into wine outside of just investing to hear that folks have come to it in that place.
Yeah, and that's a great example. I can tell you a lot of things about wine, but ask me anything about investments, forget it. That's why I go to people to help me with that stuff. So it's the same kind of thing. Not everybody's going to know or care to know what we know, and that's okay.
So looking forward into 2023, what are you excited about on a wine side? What are you going to be getting into? It's on the radar.
Obviously, Willamette Valley, I'll be definitely diving into that. I want to go back, and it's kind of my goal for this year is to start taking Spanish classes again. So I took a lot through school, and I was recently in Argentina on a wine trip. And something just clicked, and it was this is what I need to be doing somehow or another. I don't know what it looks like yet. I want to pick up my Spanish again and then figure out how to roll Argentina wines into what I do. I have no idea what it looks like. I don't know if that's making wine eventually. I don't know if it's importing. I have no idea, but I know that's the direction I want to kind of work my way towards, so I'll be working on that this year, and just all my usual projects and writing and teaching and all that stuff. So it's always exciting. It's interesting because I feel like I always have goals like that, but they're not really defined. They're more like intentions of areas I want to go. And then it just tends to work out, because I couldn't have planned this career. There's no way I could have planned this path at all. But I think if you're on the path that you know you're supposed to be on, that you're excited about it, you love it, you naturally work hard because of it. It's always a hustle, right? As long as you're doing those things, I think opportunities, you put yourself in line to find opportunities that'll line up with what you want. So it's more intentions, I think, than specific goals. So we'll see. Maybe I'll end up in Spain and not Argentina. I have no idea. But I am going to learn Spanish.
You should design the Duolingo for wine.
Oh, there
because
we go.
like my wine French is terrible and my wine German is even worse.
You know what's really
and so like it would be good to have. I can barely pronounce a lot of the producers' names in Napa.
Oh gosh, yeah. My French producer name, I'll forget that. But what's really funny, my husband bought me for Christmas a book about Wine 101 book in Spanish for you to practice your Spanish. So it's all wine stuff I know, but it's in Spanish. I'm like, this is awesome. So maybe I'll do that.
Yeah.
Just be wine Duolingo. Yeah, I like it.
I'll be your first customer.
I like it. Awesome. You never know. Very cool.
I think that's great. Yeah, we'll definitely have to get out there to Willamette. And any other reasons for me to come out are welcome, because like you said, it is beautiful.
Yeah, and you have to send me details for that sparkling wine place. I would love to get out there. Awesome.
For sure, yeah. To have some recommendations. I wanted to go back because I thought the stuff you were saying about Michigan was really cool. And so to wrap up here, maybe we can touch a few other places, because you said that you've tasted in so many different states. Yeah. Billy and I might both like to hear if you've tasted in Vermont. I'd really like to hear how much you've tasted in Maryland and Virginia. Billy's from Virginia too.
Nice, awesome.
But yeah, any of those three places, does something stand out to you? Or?
Yeah, Vermont. Been there a couple times for wine. And that was the first place I had a couple hybrids, Marquette and Maréchal Foch, which they do in Michigan too.
Do you know David Keck?
No,
Weird. I didn't know people could drink wine in Vermont and not know him. He's an MS making wine up there.
Oh, wow.
But he's like, there's 40 total acres or whatever. There's just whatever small amount of wine. So that's crazy. All right, when you go on, I want to hear more.
Does he make cider too? Is that right, Billy? Or
I think they're planting where cider once lived or grew.
Nice. I want to say it was probably 10 years ago that I was there. And it was mostly hybrids at the time, but I would say they were some of the best hybrid wines I've had. They were done well. So yeah, Vermont was super exciting. Virginia, I was there 2 summers ago and did a bunch of the wineries there. And I think Virginia's pretty cool.
They have good Cab Franc.
Oh, they do. Yeah,
that's why
I still have a lot of that. I get a lot of their Cab Franc. And their Bordeaux blends, I think, were really cool too. It's an interesting spot. It was a cool trip. I think, what other one did Maryland? I have not had any wines from Maryland. Not yet. That'll be one.
Do you like Long Island Cab Franc? And they're known for it. I've only had a couple.
I've only had a couple too. Yeah, Finger Lakes was where I would always just stop, and that's my home away from home, so I just focus on that. But I've had a couple, and I really like their Cab Franc too. I was like, all right, I have to check that part of the state out if I can make it past the Finger Lakes one day, maybe. I tend to get stuck there.
Can you explain for listeners what a hybrid is, and also halfway for me, because I do understand some, but probably not all.
Yeah, so a hybrid is. You can jump in here too, Bill, because I've not touched hybrids in a while. But basically, Vitis vinifera are the kind of the wine-making grapes that are naturally occurring, and they also cross. So Cabernet Sauvignon is a cross between Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc, and that happened in the wild. So it's a natural hybrid, but it's still Vitis vinifera, all natural. The hybrids we're talking about, a lot of times you get French American hybrids. So they're crossing non-wine grape varieties with wine grape varieties. Is that correct, Billy?
Basically just like different species.
Yeah.
Technically they are American varieties of grapes like Labrusca, Riparia, some other ones that can produce grapes, and they have been made into wine, but they just have distinct they're just not very good wine. They're foxy wine.
Like Concord in the Mid-Atlantic or the South, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they'll cross them to basically all of the features, like some that can grow in the Northeast, and they're really hardy in the cold.
Yeah. So they pick like the pieces they want from certain ones, and then they develop a lot of them. Cornell, a bunch are developed out in Minnesota.
Minnesota too.
Yeah. So they'll genetically engineer different hybrids to fit with those things that we need. Drought resistant, cold hardy, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. And there's
Brady would have appreciated. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but I did have a Minnesota wine last weekend.
Nice.
That was pretty cool. Of one of these hybrids, so that was neat.
Awesome. Was it a Frontenac by chance?
No, it was not. I actually like Frontenac. Another long story. My brother used to date someone who lives in Ohio and makes wine, and she gave us a lot of random things.
Awesome.
But one random note, just so our listeners, finish off on the nerdy side. Crossings are Vitis vinifera with Vitis vinifera. Hybrids, Vitis vinifera with other species.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just so those.
Yeah, because you can cross, what is it, Pinotage. That's like a cross between two.
Cinsault and Pinot Noir. Yeah.
So it's a cross. It's not a hybrid. Yeah, good point. Good point.
So are most of I'm just trying to think, like Syrah, is that a single kind of Vinus vinifera, or was it originally two different viniferi?
Good question. I don't know about Syrah.
Syrah,
or just like any of maybe Syrah, that was a bad example.
It's in more of an ancient varietal, and from like actually the Rhone, they have a hard time finding its DNA, but like Jancis and this guy named Vouillemose, they basically have a book that's called Wine Grapes. It's like 1,000 grapes, and they've done DNA tracking, so you can see the parentage of like most grapes. Almost all of them are. It's so cool, but
and then you got
everything
is
from something else.
There's all kinds of stuff because then you've got all
mutation.
These different Pinot Noir clones, different Chardonnay clones, and it's the same plant but different DNA, slightly different DNA. So it gets complicated and wild, but it's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool stuff.
Almost all grapes we have are natural crossings, like the old French grapes and some other ones. There's very few that are ancient that are like very at the top.
Yeah, and a lot of times, and when you look at the old vineyards way back when, everything was just planted wild and all out there. So vine by vine could be a different grape variety. It didn't look like it does today, where you've got rows of Pinot Noir, rows of Cab Sauv. Like they were all just mixed together. And so a lot of times you didn't even know what it was. And that's why they're still discovering so many different varieties and regions, and old world regions still too.
Was it like, I guess like maybe a Certico is one that is ancient and hasn't been crossed naturally before. I don't know if we have that knowledge readily available.
Yeah.
But I just remember when we were on Santorini, they were saying that it wasn't affected by phylloxera, obviously, because it was like out on the island, and that I'm pretty sure it was there when folks came, but I could be wrong about that.
That's what I heard when I was there too.
I was just trying to rack my mind for something that maybe fit that.
There for a while. It's amazing how old some of these can be. It's incredible. And just the varieties that are still popping up, and then the ones that are long extinct too, because there's, I'm sure, many that have disappeared, and then there'll be new ones.
Oh yeah, if you ever want to go way down the wine rabbit hole, I'm only like halfway through the book, but The Story of Wine by Hugh Johnson, it starts in like many millennia BC and brings up like how wines evolved through time and as it was part of culture. But he talks about so many varieties that were written down, and they're like, we have no idea what this was, or this definitely doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. But it made great wine.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And like in the old text, there's no Cabernet Sauvignon. Like that didn't come around until much later. So it's wild to think about. Now it's like one of the most well-known, certainly most planted grape. And it's kind of wild to think about. That's relatively new in wine history. Now it's the king, so it's kind of it's wild.
Yeah, this is great. I think we touched a lot of stuff that's really good for kind of casual wine consumers and new folks, but also maybe some nerdy stuff as well. So definitely appreciate your knowledge and insight, and I definitely got some things to look out for. So I'll be Googling Michigan wines that ship to Maryland.
Nice. There you go. I can give you a few. I know to do. So,
nice.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we'll send you some notes. We'll send you some notes on Willamette too, and get you connected with some of our friends.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now this is great. And then real quick on VinoHead, I forgot to mention, people can sign up for that website, and it is free. Good thing to note about the newsletter. It is free, so it's just a sign up online.
Yeah, we'll drop some links in the show notes too, and in the YouTube description and stuff. And so make sure that people can find you guys easily.
Yeah, if anybody's out
always
in LA,
great content.
They're hosting a bunch of social club pop-up parties. We did probably a handful or a dozen or so last year, and then we're going to increase that number this year. So those will be happening, starting out in LA, eventually spreading to other cities. But just meet and greet wine nights and taste some cool wine, meet some people that love wine, and build that community.
The main parameter for those dates are when Billy is traveling. Every single one, I was just like, when I'm gone, that's when the VinoHead event is.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's fun.
Yeah, thanks, Kristy. Yep, we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Sounds good.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. I hope everybody enjoyed our interview with Kristy and learning more about VinoHead. We forgot to mention actually in the intro that they are long-term friends of the program. Their founder, Josh, I've had lunch with him out here in New York. He's very early contact with Nick, was helping advise the event as we got off the ground and encouraging us. So shout out to VinoHead. Everybody should check it out. Subscribe to their mailing. And we're going to be back with another episode next week. We have a few interviews that we have to choose from coming up. So stay tuned. Who knows what will be next? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
To check out our current offerings and to sign up for the Vint platform, find us at www.vint.co. That's www.vint.co. For questions, comments, or feedback on the Vint podcast, please email us at support@vint.co. Vint and VV Markets are offering securities pursuant to Regulation A. Our offering circular as amended can be found on the SEC website. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Investments such as those on the Vint platform are speculative and involve substantial risks to consider before investing. We may provide communication that may contain certain forward-looking statements that are subject to various risks and uncertainties. Information provided in any communications, including this podcast, is not legal, business, or tax advice. All prospective investors should consult a legal, tax, or business advisor concerning the subject matter of any communications and any offering.